Okay, I swear I'm not doing a hair commercial here. Um, I've been doing a kind of a strange practice lately, which is my own kind of attempt at like learning my body. Um, where I live is in the Midwest, so we've been having over 100 degree weather. I'm out in the mail trucks for 9 hours, 10 hours a day. But I like to save on AC, and plus, if I try to turn on the AC in the middle of the blast of day, I feel like it's more liable to get damaged because it takes more power to charge it. Uh, so I wait till the evening time. So I have a fan on in here. Lately, the last couple of days, I've been practicing martial arts and literally just creating this as a sauna. So I don't know. I don't know. It just feels like an urge to do it while we have it in this season because we can treat the weather in a in a nicer environment like your space and purge out things. I truly sincerely believe our body is a self-regenerating system, but we're so far between it because we're largely cut off from the signal um, that can provide help. And that's the thing, that's this patriarchy. It's a hold, it's a sense of control over regenerated substance. The guys today, in a more shadowy way, is money. I've always questioned the narrative of like, why do we have elites? Why has there been apocryphal moments of time in which some form of hierarchy collapses on itself? And we have these formidable powers still, but it's kind of a cult like now because we don't really actually know where the axis of powers were. I mean, isn't that strange? In World War II, you have the Axis power and the Allied powers. It sounds like the same wheel, but maybe two different wheels, but weaving in between each other. Um, you know, this kind of binary view of Democrat, Republican, woman, man. It's like all these things are under question for good reasons, and that's what this Ghost in the Bell podcast is today. I'm gonna unpack the thought just from a experience I had recently. So, um, I've always had issue with power. Um, I don't think anybody would know power and revolution without the First Nation peoples of America, and absolutely the First Nation peoples of Africa, all throughout there, especially in Nigeria. I mean, as I'm catching up to the stories of groups of people who have always, uh, uh, through life of their own loved ones, fought back to protect their traditions and everything. And the thing I think that's collapsing on itself is that, unfortunately, this kind of elite has been within a class that, thanks to Hitler, more likely it was pushed this way into a kind of racial enterprise. And the thing that was weird, like if you read up on Hitler, is like him and Himmler, his higher up, very interested in occult like stories in which there was the human race belonged to an extra civilization. And Hyperborea, the book, or what is called the Chronicles of Bach, these kind of interior places inside the earth where our ancestors live. And I was really drawn to this. I'm not quite the apt reader, into religious texts so much as I am mostly in like poetry and stories and novels, but largely my imagination is just budded from kind of playing with the activity of these ideas. And but the thing to this kind of hierarchy that we have today isn't human. Burroughs, I mean, I'm sure everybody has always had some mindset of a mind virus. There's some weird, infective, excessive way of thinking that only benefits what it wants and not everyone else. But because it's so complex, I don't think it's necessarily where we are now based upon just race now, or even if it was that all along. It was that just some people were more susceptible and damaged enough to receive, I think, inverted coding, what do you call it in like video game, kind of a glitch, because the signal is wavered and broken because of trauma and pain and trial. So this kind of spiritual warfare is always the undercurrent of things, even though we live our day-to-day roles here. And yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Catholic Church, and now I appall it, and we kind of, it's feel like we're kind of pressured in the sense of both the conservative and the liberal mindset to respect all religions, in the sense of like, especially the Abrahamic religions. But most of these at its core is the result of the kind of paternal colonial structure that we've created for hundreds of years now, 500 years now. And I always felt in my sense that when we return to the queer body, we return the roles to the women, to the people who have this sense of the earth, we'll get to relearn how our relationship was. And this has been a longing for me. I always saw this in my mother. She had me very young, but I always knew that women had more of an intelligence that thought ahead of them than it was just about thinking. It was just that at all costs we must find a way to organize and take care of each other and maintain each other. And it's harder for it's hard for me to say if it's cis men or just like the biological born man has greater difficulty is that because when they leave the womb, they don't have this kind of necessarily sisterly connection to women anymore. So we have to find the bonds in society. And so civilization, largely with these men, how to exert their energy. I mean, we're world builders, we'll build houses and we'll, conduct fleets, aerial fleets and brave the new world. But obviously as we grow, it's not that either. So it's always kind of under question. And I'm like right now, I'm working for the government. I'm a letter carrier. I deliver mail, and it's very much, I'm told, organized like a military system in that sense. Except you can still get in trouble, and it's not like you're gonna have it. It's hard to explain, but like most of the veterans end up there. But the other day, first time, I haven't done it since high school, I accidentally bumped into a mailbox, and it toppled it. Damn. So you got to call them. I was a little panicky, but I called and I said, this happened. They're like, wait. And so the office people have to come over here and do the investigation. You have to go sit over here and sit in shame. And then they'll take you back to the office and clock you out. And then you don't work for a day or two. And the next day, you're going to listen to 4 hours of training videos of Star Wars themed letter carriers. Kid you not. And then you have to do training again, all this. But the thing that sucked is that I saw my mistake, how it affected several people, because they have to shuffle the cards. They have to figure out, okay, how are we going to cover this mail? Now we have to find someone the route. And so it's a beautiful organizing process in the sense of like we have that ability as a community. It's good. In a kind of ecological revitalization, that energy and be directed back to nature and to learning those things. And that's where I'm at. But I am rigidly stuck in this job because I'm just saving money right now. But this process like invoked that sense of shame and guilt I felt when I was a Catholic, that I was born with sin, that I'm not worthy of the grace and goodness and of love of God, if I don't suffer, if I don't struggle my way for it. And I think we've all almost like on a reincarnated level or like feel kind of spiritually exhausted. Like I'm very curious for people to like, okay, how many lifetimes, like I don't always think like that in mindset, but I feel like I'm very sensitive to a lot of people. It's like, for real though, it's like, there's a lot of shit going on, and the amount of bones from genocides and atrocities that are like coming up from the soil, literally. Orca whales and creatures are rebelling back, and that invokes something really that goes back to the Elysian mysteries, I feel, to the time when we had a kind of goddess worship, but to not think about it effeminately, maybe almost like an androgynous kind of being that is a self-regenerating being. And I've always directed, you always hear as above, so below, but I say as below, so above. The reflection of eternity can be from the place in which it's cultivated. Earth is a garden, okay? It's a spaceship. Get into that in time, thanks to Octavia Butler's Lilith's Brood trilogy. Highly recommend that kind of sense that this is a possibility. But I disguise my thinking and I explore this in a safer zone in the sense of poetry and storytelling. I say that because I watched the first episode about, I forgot what it was called on Netflix, but about cults. And I've been fascinated for the last 6 months to somewhat study just like diabolical people, throughout, especially in World War II, both the Axis and Allied powers, Just the atrocities that a one person could do is, and now enterprise that has cut us off from traditions and language paths, sensory places in which we were singularized with this planet. It's like the bird, all the variants of the birds and the mammals and the insects, around the world. I mean, that's us. We were anywhere and everywhere. Always, we've always been that. And that Earth is like circulating, like, almost like a toroidal shaped kind of spaceship. And at some points, at times, people who go on the surface, for several hundred years or something, and they go back inside the Earth. Like there's this reason for or like kind of an economy for an exploration. And this is that kind of myth and theme I'm building my story, because in like subterranean lore and the possibility of our ancestors living in an eternal place that it's just right below. It's like, well, we worship, like three religions worship essentially an invisible God. And someone said this, but that the visible God is right before you, and that's Earth. What is any other better version of the self-being system than has known? But it's been massively screened over by the kind of histrionics and storytelling what we're experiencing. And certainly industries and corporations are painting this kind of neo sci-fi space of future. Like that's what I've been trying to synthesize, this thing of like where this enterprise is going. And the only answer is that it's going for space. And I'm kind of rigid in that belief right now, because otherwise I don't know why it would be so exploitative on the environment, on people, and that it keeps people enslaved and alive just by, that's why they created agriculture in this, at least in the insensitized way that we have agriculture today, of keeping people fed generationally and comfortable enough to be able to produce children so they have a generation to continue this enterprise. And it's kind of showed in the directive, in order to have a rocket, we had to make bombs first. So let's make a war and test these out, because where else are we going to do it? And so that whole mindset began. And that's why I kind of consider that an alien, the alien kind of invasion of mind. Although I know there's been war and atrocities through time. And that's why I think that's like what's most sensitive about humans being on the Earth, is that we are subject to foreign or interstellar entities, or just like, dead matter, just weird things that we have to figure out and metastasize and immunize. And the point is to see this as like, that this is a self-serving system. So heaven's not something far off, but that it's here, and Earth is a wheel. Now, the question I have, and coming back to, like I said, I'm unpacking it from my job being a mailman, because it's like, I can sincerely understand like the system and like working towards a social contract, being a good citizen, working hard. But the ceiling is getting very intense in our times. I mean, just with the deficit and rental property prices, and like loans are starting to kick in again because we didn't have to pay for years. And it's like, where is this money coming from? Where is it going to? And so we're kind of stuck in that sense of poverty, depravity. And I think that's the narrative they need, because then we the one system we need is our job, is the government, is this job. But it's a massively disorganized system that has no human resources, no sense of needs and the delicacies of life, and how much their demand takes away our time with people we love consistently. I'm sure if we gathered enough stories, an office person just the other day told me she has a couple of kids, but she can't even see her boyfriend, and that relationship's already wanting to end. She drives a total of 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours a day to drop her kids off, go into the city, and it's like, that's her life for a long time, if she chooses to go that path. And I realized it the last year or so, and I've been able to save up enough money to start investing in little things here and there, but everything has been, and this is where I'm getting at, this mindset of like belonging, because this is like what the kind of these cults, literal actual cult groups, Charles Manson, a lot of these people like capitalize on this kind of vacuum in us, in which we are sincerely who are taken away from traditions, or taken away from even the reason why we are connected outside of money or like dogma or religion. Um, for me, going back to those listening mysteries again, I think it was largely a place of storytelling and innovation of spirit and consciousness and connection with the earth, and learning to kind of essentially unify ourselves with her being, and it's the one all thing. It's the unified belief of all the world that I think that would be quite helpful, because Earth has always manifested herself in all her many forms. If you're fortunate enough to be friends with anybody who's a queer body, a native, person broken up from the diaspora of Africa, throughout the Caribbeans, the world, all these traditions, like, to meet these people who come from rivers, long time lineages, and all of us are connected to that. Even me. I mean, I know I'm largely the template of like Germanic and Irish and what say you. I'm so distant to that I think that's why white people, and largely people who have been living in this propaganda age of America, sees the native as something they want to eliminate or ignore, because they see themselves at some distant past. Something. That's why I keep calling it an alien invasion, because at some point it's affected every group of people, and it's just now materialized largely in the system we see it as, the global world powers right now, but of course more or less America. The Biden-esque looking man, like, that's America, that's America. These competing values, these competing racial structures and hierarchies are so going to become obsolete. But this is what kind of worries me, because I'm doing this podcast, and I have a mouth, I do talk, I have a novel I'm working on, I have poetry, so I am meant to share something and want to share and collaborate with people. But I'm doing this podcast largely just so people can like unlayer me, in the sense of my intentions, because they're watching cult of personality things. That's the reason why I've been so solitary, but also longing to belong to everybody in a way in which we share our imagination or creativity. But the cult of personalities all like kind of become, and a lot of these people come from broken structures, right? And I'm vulnerable. Like, those people are really vulnerable that will go to greater lengths, I guess, to get that love or attention, especially if it's through social media or whatever. And so we cover that wound. And so I don't want to cover that wound. I'm sincerely, like, I have this image of like, us around a fire, just sharing those stories and sharing our poetry, our songs, and living in a village society mindset again, which you have a village space at the center, homes kind of scattered about in the area. Each of these villages are connected to other villages around the world again. And we don't feel overly populated as much as we were, because we just realized we had to kind of like spore outward again, back, around the world or inside the world, and that's what I'm building in my novel, is this kind of transcendental opening, that's available to all of us to reclaim, because it's frustrating. I want to know what I can sincerely belong to, but I don't necessarily want to do the roles in which that is, like becoming a father, getting married and having kids and having a job, joining a church, a sports team, um, all these things that largely people would go together, right? Politics, activism, all those things are good. I get that. But I just keep having that. Maybe it would be helpful if you guys read Octavia Butler's Lilith trilogy and see how that life after the apocalypse would look like, and how it still will have its troubles. And that's what's kind of exciting about working on my novel, Lambie Creations, because it's about that. It's the world after the apocalypse. It's kind of more a part of the solar punk lore that I think is gaining momentum, that is kind of working counter-revolutionarily against the kind of I'm not saying the whole thing is a narrative, because I absolutely believe in ecological disaster, but it's the proponent that we're going to be eliminated very soon because of our footprint on the planet. And it's to say it's not true, but that we live in an age of titans and idols. And so they're going to fall much harder than we will. Okay. And so that's my favorite part. And I'm not a Nicodemus of this time. I'm not trying to say it's happening. In fact, I don't even. I'm gonna. I feel myself just writing it out. Like, if what I'm saying isn't going to happen in my lifetime, okay, but I'm still going to write the story because I know in this time I'm going to give all my optimism and love and excitement for a regeneration of consciousness in which the reason we come together does not form into a cult, a dogma, a hierarchy, that it's so natural as you would watch the birds, the bees, the fishes, and the bears. Like, it's so natural to that rhythm. And that we won't be distant from the signal or communication we will have from Earth either. And when you look at a lot of these occult personalities, largely what won them is their hypnotism, in the sense that they had a connection to a high power. That's hypnotizing for all of us because I think a lot of us, even the most skeptical and logical people who believe in science, still do like pray for miracles at night when nobody's listening, because the legion of viruses and diseases, and let's just move into the realm of psychological disorders and psychosis, is demonstrable and alluring and terrifying, especially when these personalities and psychoses have access to weapons and of all manners and kinds. And this isn't to dampen that fear, and it's true. But I'm just running with that optimism, is that there is a reboot system on this planet that is so like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know quite how to explain it, but I'm so excited for it. And I visualize in my novel. That's why I'm not going to unpack it now. And I think this is largely what distracts me and causes me to somewhat back into a mailbox, because like I'm operating at a level in which my space and my depth is so far away from. But I'm kind of like a bat out of hell in that sense, since like I'm in my dreamy space of my art and my stories and envisioning this world, and then I have to blazing, start of the morning, get in a rickety truck and like, conquer the day for 8, 9, 10 hours, and sustain my mentality, go to my martial arts class, and like find a way in this world as I'm getting older. I'm 33 right now, and it's driving me because as much as I am solitary, I also really am sincerely seeking connections and really vast ways to organize townships and village mindsets again, but having it be like an open economy in which it's educational centers, for teaching all holistic modalities, poetry workshops, gaming workshops, access to all skill sets. Because at the core, I think is what's going to unify it is is work, is the utility in which our place can be given, right? And I think we're all given a gift of some kind that can be a natural expression of nature. And this is what's going to lead into my novel, and that could be so delicately specialized in your zodiacal chart, your personality. And I think I'm kind of going into the origins of tarot in all that sense, in which we treat each other in the human body as a kind of talisman and a doorway to activate those how do you say activate those like signals, to activate the language, to change the language. I think there's a lot of what's that term, code switching. I think this is really vital to the intricacy of this Earth spaceship to be working, is having to adapt to the environment. And I think it's quite impossible for us to realize we're like an octopus living in a seaweed, like an ocean right now. Earth is, because we don't know what's out there, and we've been buffeted a few times by vangs or comets or whatever you want to call them. There's absolutely vacuous parts of space that kind of just transmogrify and turn everything back into base matter and spits it back out again. It's like it's kind of a fucking forest out there, a jungle out there always. But then we have this little dewy paradise called Earth. It's like, okay, it's like we have all that, or we could just kind of find out how this thing can be like self-regenerating for us, for our sense of place and eternity and stories and traditions. And that's the kind of singularity, the unified field of belief or activity that I'm hoping we're going to. And we're seeing the disasters of every form of attempt through politics, religion, occultism, personalities, pop culture, how that takes the human form and bastardizes it into a kind of self-collapse structure that is narcissistic and can't have any sense, doesn't have any sense to have empathy or connect with the vastness and variety of expressions that are out there. And I don't know. I'm just excited for it because it's coming back to this natural sense, but we're kind of having to re-spell it out. And I think I'm just one of those guys out there that's just doing that. You know, so I'm excited just to unlayer that with you and some poetry. Um, yeah. So what else is I wanted to talk to about today? I think that was just largely it because it's like it was so annoying to sit in that 4 hour class and like go over training that because driving is instinctual if you've done it for a long time. And it's like, yeah, I made a mistake. But like this is the same sense as religion to make that sense of guilt. And especially when you try really hard for something and you do everything that you were told to do, and then you still get reprimanded for like mistaking, especially one time. You know, it sometimes it stays on the record. You know, like the other weeks ago, the only time I got written up twice, the first time was like I said no to my superior because I worked 9.5 hours and I walked 12 miles that day on my route, and I said no. He's like, are you saying no? He's like, are you saying no to a work order? Like, yeah. He's like, well, I'm like, I know, I'm a little dictator, aren't I? I can't believe I even said that or whatever that was said. But like, you know, like it turns everybody into something that we don't necessarily want to be. And the thing that I think that's going to still take a while is that we live in an age of like pessimism still, a kind of like hatred and bitterness and disassociation from any example around the, you know, any example of goodness or intention of people around the world. Everybody gradually becomes an effigy, you know, and so it's a weird world. It's like, what is fame then? What is popularity? What is the whole point of likes? You know, and this is what's really bugging me a lot lately, is the social contract to each other. And I found myself smiling like I was watching this video of some man somewhere in China. Oh, it was like a 3 minute video, and he was just this beautiful man, and dogs were playing out in the fields, playing with each other. There was a field out there. He cut down a few cane trees, and he didn't really know what he was doing. And then he digs, places it in the water, leaves it there overnight. It gets sodden, right? And then he takes it back and he beats it, and it becomes the threads. And then water does this thing, puts powder on it, takes it back to the water, puts powder on it, boils it, does all these things for I don't know, like a week. And like halfway through the video, you're like, what is he doing? But it's so interesting. Is this food? But then after a while, you find he's making paper. And I cried. I was like, wow. Like that would be a cool thing, you know, like in a village you have a paper maker, you know, just these little things where you can go there to learn how to make paper and then do it somewhere else, you know, like, so we don't think about all the notebooks, like school's about ready to start. We don't know how industry handles like the making of paper. It's probably quite dastardly, you know, and is a continued genocide of the forest around the world. So again, this enterprise isn't human like. But it bothers me because if it's not religion, it's going to be your role. And this is like where military is on the other side. You have religion, then you have the military body politic. And those two binaries are very strong. One's kind of the paternal system. One is kind of almost like an algorithm, like a willingness to be an AI, a purely logical system. And I think that's what a kind of organization like democracy and republic is this attempt of a superior kind of organization. But it's very hard to maintain your organization if the belief or the core of what you're doing is going to work. And that's what I'm saying. Like the core of our struggle as a human race, I want to throw out is work. We all have to work. But the problem is most of the work that we're doing, we may not actually really like. So then what's the place in between that? And that's where where skills come in, the roles reset. I'm not saying just like plumbing, you know, necessarily just carpentry, just all manners of delicacies of things that can be given back. I mean, I went to a martial arts class, and I found a community. I'm smiling when I go there, and I would love to have the Sifus living in a village where I get to go there every day. They're retired, they're taken care of, and they're teaching generations of people martial arts and self-defense. Like I get teary-eyed just like wanting to live in a place where like the currency is like what we're sharing for each other, you know, what we teach each other, what we do with each other, you know. And it's like, and every time I think about it, it's like I feel like it's up to me to kind of try to start it, but then I'm scared of being a personality. I'm scared of like opening mouth in front of people here, and like, either people radically thinking I'm insane or all those manners are thing, or people being way too interested in me. And the oscillation between both and navigating people's belief systems and all that thing. When at my core, I just want to be kind of a halfway solitary person, making paper and living on the land and going back out and doing storytelling and poetry and having my family, my friends around me, and living a good life. I genuinely feel it's very like a simple kind of mindset of where I'm going. It's not catapult myself to Beyonce levels or any of that. But it's conflicting because likes matter to me. I know nobody's in this space right now, and I've been talking to myself literally for 30 minutes. But it's just trusting this because someone will listen to it someday, and I'm just glad you're here and listening to me. Um, for right now, I'm really liking the name Skyla Dew right now. Skylar Dew or Skyla Dew. Skyla feels a little is the mantra of the heart, so Skyla Dew. But yeah, whoever tunes in will watch me unfold because I am working towards something. I'm a novelist, a poet, an artist. All around, I want to be an activist, an event organizer, and a lot of levels. In fact, later this December, at one of the event spaces here in the city I'm living at, I'm starting to organize a 2-day event. I'm going to do a curated show. I'm going to read like a poetry play thing, and I'm going to have a musician from Chicago, and my friend Eric, and like different things going on. And then Saturday will be like more of an all native local art show for the local native peoples around. I think it'd be really cool. So I'm kind of like broadcasting that because nothing makes me more happier to see people happy for who they are. And when it's a self gift, children nurture, everybody's nurtured the rest of their life for whatever it is that you're doing or creating. Are you going to be a dancer for the rest of your life? What's the kind of choreography you're going to develop in this lifetime that we want to learn? Because it's true. It's like the more things you learn, the more your body like becomes this compartment that like opens up. You're like, there's a lot more things in here. I mean, I'm feeling that with martial arts because yes, there is a yang of violence to it. In fact, my teacher's just like, I could never do the Qigong and Tai Chi stuff. That's an old people's thing, even though he's like, in his late 50s, 60s anyway. But he's like such an old person. I'm violent, and he's just like, if I want to relax, I'm just going to, and I love that. Like, because it's true. Like everybody does have a different body and some people do generate a lot more energy. And I'm unfortunately like starting to realize like, if I'm not cultivating my energy enough, like I'm going to crash pretty hard and be a lot low and rely on weed or coffee. But like this martial art is starting to show me like I do have to generate a lot more actually energy. And maybe that's part of my zodiacal plate. I'm a Gemini, have a lot of air in my chart, water. And so I'm starting to look at esoterically that what if there's a way to kind of read your blueprint? And I know this isn't my new idea. In fact, I just called that out just now. If there's somebody who specializes in that down to dieting, hit me up. And I hope when you do that, martial arts, is one of the forms that is necessary for my body to become my authentic body. So I'm calling on those spiritual doctors out there to kind of help me diagnose like what are good things that I can do, because I believe that that's the ancient systems. When you look into Eastern medicine systems, they can look at your body and look at it as a story script, of like where certain emotions have caused disease throughout your body, or they can connect it just by looking at you through a sense system. But see, this is the thing that I feel like the history we're living in right now is like it doesn't want to know the potential of the human. And in a way, it's nice to have looked at it as the Superman level, but also like the hero level, and like, it looks like in the common man, the firefighter, the police officer, the soldier, the doctor, But now there's like a whole nother level that's up to question, and it's in the delicacy of your expression now. And I can't let that go. In my Lambie story, I really feel that once you make contact with your necessary thread, you can find your path that works for you. And it's a story building idea, but I think that we're going to see this very soon, the next 100 years or so, a kind of radical change. And I hope you'll see that in my novel, The Lambie Creations, because it's going to be my best attempt at capturing it. I've reminded people in the other Ghost in the Bell that I'm about halfway through it. I actually, in fact, have been pretty much on a hiatus from it for about a month or so now, but it's just been very hot. over 100-degree weather, working a lot of hours. And so I'm kind of planting that time more for fall and winter, when I can do that more. But I need to get in the habit at least doing a page here and there for sure, because it's a beautiful story. I'm excited. It's the prequel. This is going to be called The Neon Plateau, and it examines really the shadow world we are living in and how we're all waiting in line for the future. And it has at its core an occult leader. And so I think that's why I'm seeing the importance of understanding these personalities and how these personalities influence us and communities of people, regardless if they're liberal or conservative or whoever. Anybody that you take as the total word, uh, you're on a very narrow path, because then you'll no longer be able to hear your own intuition, your own sense and thinking. And that's vital to live in this world. In fact, Gaia, Earth, asks this of you, to be able to make contact with your core, your very soul-like substance, because that's where her touch and her power lives in you. It's in your hara. And she can't do everything for you because she's a vast regenerating system. So she has to navigate the cosmos, have extrasensory abilities to be able to know where she's going. And we are part of that help. And we've been very distracted, but she definitely needs our help with our navigatable abilities, because we're quite, humans have been quite tactful and seafaring. And I'm not saying where you going at with seafaring activities, but I'm just saying Earth may not always look like how she looks, and maybe she doesn't for certain reasons. It doesn't matter. I will unpack that in my Lambie Chronicles, which will come after my prequel. If I had more time, or I shouldn't even say it like that, because I'm committing a magical spell if I say it like that. I kind of have a certain organization that I'm doing this as an evolution right now of. I'm just going to say this for you guys, like just for like a brand, right? Like it's going to be called Lambie Creations, but largely it's going to be a platform that's going to help me to be able to make the time to finish these novels, to create my fashion designs, and then gradually it's going to, and in between that, it's going to be community development connections, and but it's not a franchise. It's not necessarily a franchise that I'm going for. It's just like a sense of the identity I'm creating in this life. To open that mindset that Earth is available to you now, to radically shift and be sensitized to her intuition and to her power. So below as below, so above, and to know we can trust this kind of stepping stone, the Earth, as the kind of building of our souls. In fact, the place in which our souls are cultivated. I do not claim to know the mysteries of eternal life or the cosmos. I'm actually quite like I'm in the dark a lot of the times in the New Age mindset, and don't even think about the Pleiadians or Arcturians and galactic councils of federation. I make some kind of feats of understanding that mindset in my Neon Plateau. I do call them the Galactic Council, and there are interstellar beings. And but I personally haven't had an encounter, and it's never been more alive than just the characters in my story and the voices in our head. And I'm always at the question, what is guiding us? And habitual response systems from shock and trauma and things, or can there be more further directives? And I think that's why we choose jobs or roles that have directives to keep her busy in a mindset, and that's vital. And this is where I'm calling out, that kind of replacement of utilitarian function for industry into a regenerative function for harmony. And that's what I'm just opening up today in the Ghost in the Bell, because it sucks. I'm getting my job back and stuff, but now I just got spanked, and and I'm like, dude, how long is this? I keep saying this in the most naive way a child could say. It's like, how can the system keep going? And when I say that to people, like, what are you talking about? I'm like the government, nation states, corporations, like how can you keep? And he's like in his 50s, he's almost a retirement age. For me, I'm like, got 30 years, and it's like they want me to kind of like leave in that's the rule, like the placement. And there's so much in my spirit that's fighting it. That's so just quitting and living in a van and doing that life, because seriously, I want to be with people, and I want to also be with myself in beautiful places to be able to receive um, an ease in my body to be able to practice my practices, to do poetry, to go back into the world and be my most authentic self, a good person. And, I think this is really the lifetime for us, y'all. And for those who really hear it, I hope you hear it, okay? You're worth it. Anyway, that's my little jaunt, 40 minutes. That's probably okay for now. Until next time. Skyladoo out.